If you found this video, my assumption is that you're a doctor looking for their next role in the NHS. It might be your first role if you're an international doctor coming in from overseas, or it may be an ongoing role if you're a UK-based doctor. I'm one of the directors of BDI Resourcing, and my business has helped over 3,000 doctors find roles within the NHS. So we've hosted interviews for most of those. We're either sat in on the panel in the Teams links, or alternatively we gather the feedback and the debriefs after the interviews. So that puts us in a really good position to be able to provide you with some insight and knowledge about what to expect in an NHS interview. This video is going to be about some top tips. We're not going to go into the specific questions that you might get asked, but some tips on how to prepare for an NHS interview. So you've been invited for your NHS interview. Very exciting news, and you're probably already anticipating what kind of questions you're going to get asked. Well, the most important thing to do is to do some research first, and that might give you a few clues as to what to expect in terms of the interview questions. You're going to want to start that research thinking about the hospital itself. So take a look at the vision and the values of the hospital that you are potentially going to be working in. If you can learn a bit more about those, NHS interviews are often focused around what they call value-based recruitment. So they're going to test you on the vision and values of the trust and then put that into a context of maybe a clinical or an ethical scenario and how you would apply those values to your work. So do some research on the vision and values of the trust you're going to work for. These are easily available online, a very simple starting point for you to have a look at. The next thing to do some research on is the department itself. Most NHS job descriptions will give you a really good idea of the facilities, the type of department, the number of consultants, the specialist fields that they cover, even the number of middle grades and junior doctors, the nursing support, everything you would need to know about the department. And again, that's a really important thing to note, because if you're coming from a very similar hospital, it gives you the opportunity to provide similar examples. And equally, if you're coming from a different background or setting, it gives you an opportunity to recognise that and equally be able to show that you are prepared and ready to work in the new setting. You're also going to want to think about the role itself, the actual specifics of the job. For exactly the same reason, it might be very similar to the job you're doing, or there might be some differences that you want to highlight to show that you're prepared for that. So think about the job description, the rota, the on-call commitments, anything you can find in the job description, and have a bit of an analysis of what you're doing now versus what the new role is going to entail. You're also going to want to think about the interview panel. So normally this will be included in your track link, or if you're sent a Teams invite, you'll be able to see who's going to be a part of the panel. Do a little bit of research into them, look them up on LinkedIn, find out a bit more about their background, their history. Again, it's all readily available information, and it's going to help you, if nothing else, knowing what the panel look like and seeing their faces ahead of the interview might just make you feel a little bit more comfortable once you arrive in the interview setting. So background research is the first step in preparing for your NHS interview. Do as much as you can, learn as much as you can, and you will feel more comfortable, more confident, and more prepared. So now that you've done your research into the trust, the department, the values, the vision, the job itself, the job role, and the interview panel, you're going to want to think back to your application, your CV, and any examples that you can prepare that will relate well to those. So the first starting point is to have a good read through your CV and maybe just drill down on a few of the things that perhaps you said vaguely, or you made some summaries of, but didn't go into full depth. The reason for this is that you're going to need examples throughout your interview. It's no use saying, I can do that, I can do the other. You're going to need to exemplify everything that you say. So go back through and think about your experience. Maybe you've had good examples of patient interactions or clinical scenarios, and relate this back to the job that you're applying for, the role, the details that we have already done the research on. So if you know that you're going to be working in a very busy setting, on-call is going to be a big part of the job, then perhaps you want to think about how you cope with a busy, stressful environment and that kind of thing, and give examples of where that's been the case throughout your career. So think about your application, your CV, and any examples that you can prepare from your background and your history, and relate those back to the research that you've done. Right, the next step in preparing for your interview is to think about the questions that you might be asked. Now, we've got a really useful tool for this on our website, which you can go on and download. We have 6 different speciality specific interview guides where we've compiled over 50 questions in each guide with clinical scenarios, ethical scenarios, biographical questions, questions to ask at the end of the interview, and questions about your future aspirations. These are real life interview questions that have been taken from the thousands of interviews that we've been a part of as BDI Resourcing. And as I say, they are specialty specific. So we have them for pediatrics, medicine, radiology, anesthetics, pathology, and emergency medicine too. So get on the website, we'll post a link and download one of those guides for some real life interview questions that you can practice. I think practicing your clinical scenarios is arguably one of the most important things, and that's where we see a lot of candidates maybe letting themselves down or failing on areas where they just need to brush up on the exact protocols, the exact processes, or if they're coming from overseas, maybe think about what the NHS processes are and brush up on how things are done here to make sure that they're giving the right answers to those. Ethical scenarios as well is another one that's really important, and a lot of the time people don't think about preparing answers for those, but actually so important. If you can exemplify some of the areas where you've thought about the 7 pillars of clinical governance and brushing up on things like that, they can be so important, so integral. So download the interview guides that we've got. I think that's a great starting point for some obvious questions. But again, think back to the research you've done on the job itself, on the role, and think what kind of questions are going to come up based on that. You can usually prepare your own questions and then practice the answers, practice the examples that you're going to give as part of those. So if you've secured your interview through BDI Resourcing, you'll meet with one of your recruiters for around an hour-long interview preparation call ahead of your interview. That's done over Microsoft Teams, and whether you're interviewing with BDI Resourcing or directly and doing it yourself, we really do recommend setting up a practice interview ahead of your real-life interview. First and foremost, and if for no other reason than this, you need to test the connection. So use the device that you're going to be using on the day, ideally in the location that you'll be using it, so that you know the internet connection is good enough, there's no problems with the sound, there's no problems with the video, your device is set up and working properly. But it also allows you to put yourself in that scenario, perhaps wear what you're going to wear on the day, get your friend or your colleague to ask you some of the interview questions that you prepared and give real life answers to them. It might feel a little bit awkward doing this, and I know sometimes people feel that way when they're doing their mock interviews with us, but it really does help. If you can do it in practice, you can do it in real life. And as we always say, practice makes perfect. So practice over an hour-long Teams call. Don't expect it to be that long on the day. It's probably more likely going to be 20 or 30 minutes. But if you overdo it and prepare for more questions, then you're likely to feel good on the day. Best of luck with your NHS interview. This video has been all about the top tips for preparing for your interview. We do have some other interview guides on the types of questions that might come up, as well as techniques to prepare, including CAMP, STAR and SPIES. So check out those videos and make sure to get onto our website and download those practice interview questions as well. It's super important, and best wishes and best of luck for your interview.